right, here we are, guys. This is the second unit, which means that we will be moving into the very first module of this course, which is the food compass. I'm trusting now that you have set some really powerful goals, that you have clarity about what you want to achieve. And then we're going to go through a couple of, I suppose, almost housekeeping rules when it comes to nutrition, so that we can start by removing a lot of confusion and getting you clarity from day number one. So what you need to understand is that nutrition equals a lot of things. And you're going to see this throughout these different units where, if we don't understand the fact that nutrition equals lots of things, then we are really going to struggle in the sense that we will be trying to do all these things at once. And as many men have experienced before, you will find that that's just going to lead to losing 5 kilo and putting the same 5 kilo back on again, trying to lose those same 5 kilo again. So we want to make sure that we understand that nutrition is fuel, nutrition is psychological, nutrition is social, and nutrition has to do with a lot more than just macros and calories. But in saying that, we also need to understand these nutrition housekeeping rules. And anything that has to do with losing or gaining weight has to do with calories in versus calories out. That's a principle. It's not the way to get to Rome, so to speak, but it is the principle that we need to abide by for someone to actually get to where they want to get to. What that means is that if you want to lose weight, you need to be eating less than what you expend. It's that simple. That's how the body's going to tap into the body fat stores and burn it off and keep it off long term. Now, the way in which you get to that, for some people, can be calorie counting. For some people, it could be focusing on, the size of your portions. And for others, it could be maintaining their food and increasing their energy expenditure, doing more physical activity and exercise. And the same happens for weight gain and weight maintenance as well. And we also have to understand that we have 5 primary macronutrients. And the reason they are called macros or macronutrients is that we need them in more than 1 gram per day. That's really the textbook definition of that. But that's really important from an educational point of view, guys. That means that we have proteins, carbs, fats, alcohol, and water. And no, I'm not giving you permission to go and drink a shit ton of alcohol just because I'm telling you here that you need it in more than 1 gram per day to actually be sufficiently healthy. That's a very different topic that we're going to cover another time. And then we have things that we call micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals, and they are further broken down into different things as well. But those vitamins and minerals are essential for us to have, for the body to be able to build proteins, use fats and carbs as a fuel source, producing energy and a lot more. Vitamins and minerals are essential. And vitamins and minerals, as you're going to see later, they can be fat soluble or water soluble. Some of them we have to supplement depending on what kinds of foods we eat, and others you don't. But that's the kind of stuff you're going to have to seek help from a doctor, maybe an endocrinologist, and so on and so forth. So with all of that in mind, let's rip into a couple of things over the next 5 to 10 minutes. So first, we need to understand what a calorie is. A calorie that we talk about, guys, is what we actually call a kilocalorie. For some reason, that's just been broken down into a calorie, but it's really important that we know that. So if you see that it says kcal or kilocalorie, that's what you and I refer to in everyday language as a calorie. And you'll also see that some people use the word kilojoule. Calories or kilojoules are simply ways of measuring energy. That's it. Like, there is no other way of looking at that. Where, if you had a calorie, you have a point of energy. If you have 1,000 calories, you have 1,000 points of energy. And if you want to convert that to kilojoules or kilojoules to calories, then you know that 4.18 kilojoule is 1 calorie. So if something says that it has 4,000 kilojoules in it, it has approximately 1,000 calories in it, okay? But I don't know why, but for some reason here in Australia, we like to make things complicated and we use kilojoules instead of calories, even though most people are used to the word calories. And what we have to understand, guys, is that foods, they contain a combination of energy and different kinds of nutrients. You know, people always talk about macros in terms of proteins, carbs, and fats, which is fine. But what a lot of people tend to forget is that foods are made up of those three. So foods have proteins, carbs, and fats in some way, shape, or form or ratio at any given point in time. And therefore, some foods, you know, let's say fast foods, they often contain a lot of energy, but they don't contain a lot of nutrients. So we call those energy dense foods. And then you have the foods that contain a lot of nutrients, such as broccoli and different kinds of vegetables and fruits that don't have a lot of calories or energy in them, but they have a lot of nutrients that are really important for the body to actually use. And these are things that we really need to remember all the time. And I really want you to take away the fact that we eat foods, we don't eat macros or nutrients. And that's really, really important to remember, because that will help you actually understand, you know, how to start developing a good relationship with food. And the other thing that we have to consider as well, guys, is that calories are not 100% accurate. So if you eat 100 calories of something, depending on what that something is made up of, you will absorb X% of that food, or those calories. And we also have to consider people with gut issues as an example, where they can't necessarily absorb all of those calories. And then we also have to understand that things like MyFitnessPal, which you can easily track on your phone in an app, they are not 100% accurate anyway, because it depends on what you put in there. So just blindly abiding by calories without knowing how to track other aspects of food, it's not going to be literally the solution to the problems you're currently facing. So with that in mind, let's focus on one last little thing before we stop this unit, because in the next unit, we're going to look at the different macros and why they are important. So here you'll see a little, I suppose, pie chart of what we call energy expenditure. So energy expenditure is the amount of energy that you expend every day as a result of being alive and being a human being and eating food. Most of the energy that every single person expends comes from what we call basal metabolic rate, or BMR. BMR is the amount of energy you expend simply by being alive and not doing any kind of activity. And this is a big misconception, because a lot of people don't consider the fact that they need a certain amount of calories to function, even though they don't do any exercise. So your body needs a certain amount of calories just for the heart and the lungs and the organs and the, you know, your brain and everything else to function really well. So without food, we can't survive. It's that simple. And then you have PA, which is what we call physical activity. And that is built up in this graph of things like exercise and things that aren't exercise, such as walking, you know, fiddling your fingers, tapping your hands, sitting here with your feet, doing the washing, doing the dishes, hanging up the laundry, everything else. And that accounts for, depending on the person, approximately 30% of how much energy you expend every day. And we're going to go really into depth about how important it is to understand that, let's say that you work out for half an hour, you have 23 and a half hours to fuck that up, you know, outside of the gym. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. For some people, exercise can really make a big difference into how much body fat you burn. But for the majority of people though, and especially men who work office jobs, are busy, exercise is not going to be huge when it comes to energy expenditure. So we need to understand how we control for all these other things outside of the gym to make them stay active and burn a lot more body fat. And then you actually burn energy by breaking down the food that you eat. So let's say that I was to eat an apple, that I have to chew that, it has to go into my stomach, then it has to mix with stomach acid, then it has to go into my intestinal tract before it becomes poo. That process there, guys, when I break that food down and then it gets absorbed into my bloodstream and I can use it as energy, costs points of energy. So let's say that I ate 100 calories of protein. Approximately 15 of those calories, 10 to 15, depending on who you ask, will be burnt just breaking down the food. If I ate carbs or pure fats as an example, in comparison, it would be a lot less than that. But we have to understand that if I eat protein-rich foods as an example, excuse me, there we go. If I eat protein-rich foods as an example, I will burn a teeny tiny bit more energy just from eating those foods. So that's energy expenditure in the nutshell. We want to make sure that we have enough food for the body to function really well. So crash dieting is very, very rarely a good thing to do. We need to make sure that we understand that for most men, exercise itself will not lead to a great deal of energy expenditure because we're short on time. So we want to maximize how active you can be in ways that you've probably never thought about before. And then we also need to understand that, in terms of the energy that we expend every single day, a component of that is also the food that we eat. And that means that we have to eat well and we need to eat often throughout the day to maximize this component here of energy expenditure. So that's it for this unit, guys. In the next unit, as you saw, because I jumped slides using the wrong buttons, you will see that we're going to be going into macronutrients, proteins, carbs, fats, water, and a tiny bit of alcohol, so you can understand what that actually is. That's it for now, guys. Enjoy the unit, and I will see you in the next unit.